Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aussizz Conclave session 2024. I am Ambika, and I am the presenter today, and I'll be guiding you with the sessions and all the times that we were doing it. Starting with the nursing occupations and all the nursing courses in Australia, starting with our presenters. First is Michelle. Now, Michelle, for the past 7 years at Aussizz Group, Michelle Orias had privilege of serving as a senior education consultant and team leader for the Filipino community team. The second of the presenters is Mr. Navjot Singh Kharoud. He's a registered migration agent as Aussizz Group Elizabeth branch. Our third presenter will be Harjit Sandhu. Harjit Sandhu is a registered migration agent ready to assist you with family, skilled, and employer-sponsored visas. Our fourth presenter for today will be Mr. Tejas Patel. He is a registered migration agent at Adelaide, and Tejas' area of interest are skilled in employer-sponsored visa migration as well as administrative appeals or visa refusal or cancellation decisions. With that, I would now want Ms. Michelle to take over. Thank you so much.
Again, everyone, good morning, good afternoon for some others. Sorry, it's common to have a technical glitch. Again, I'm Michelle Orias, education consultant here at Aussizz Group. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you can stay with us till the end of the nursing education and migration pathway with some of our migration agents. So I'll be discussing nursing occupation and admission process. So why choose nursing profession in Australia? Nursing is the most in-demand occupation across Australia that offers potential migration options in Australia, which will be discussed by our migration agents later on. The nursing sector growth in Australia shows no sign of slowing down. That would mean this is the best opportunity for you if you don't have the nursing occupation to join the wagon. So nursing occupation is very much high demand in Australia. It gives you a pathway to residency, and it is one of the most diverse health professions and provides employment opportunities in Australia. And of course, it is recognized globally. And Australia doesn't have enough nurses. And this is the reason if you don't have any qualification yet, if you intend to get a qualification, nursing is the best choice for you to make that is beneficial both personally and professionally when it comes to migration pathway. Now, the future of nursing, it is quite promising in Australia. Healthcare and social assistance industry is the largest employing industry in Australia. Registered nurse is the top profession in the industry and an occupation that is expected to grow by 13.9% in the 5 years since November 2021, moving to November 2026. Currently, Australia doesn't have enough registered nurses. They are in desperate need to have a nursing occupation here in Australia. Registered nurses in all specialties are experiencing skill shortage in every state and territories. Therefore, nursing roles will be constantly expanding from today and even in the next years to come. Looking at the job market, according to Jobs and Skills Australia, jobs for registered nurses are predicted to increase by 12.2% in the 5 years to May 2028 and 24.5% in the 5 years to May 2033. These figures equate to 40 to 80,500 new jobs respectively. Looking at the figures, it won't be filled anytime soon. So this is the perfect opportunity for you to jump into this sector, for you to get a better opportunity should you wish to, you have a migration pathway. Now, how to become a registered nurse in Australia? Number one, if you don't hold the qualification yet, of course, you need to study the relevant nursing courses in Australia. For those others who already hold nursing qualification already back from their home country or origin country, they can convert their nursing registration to Australian registration by doing such short courses or nursing program. So we have two registrations in nursing in Australia. Number one, we have the enrolled nurse, and number two, we have the registered nurse. When it comes to registered nurse, nursing as an occupation is quite a broad field. So you can do a specialization by working in an aged care facility as an aged care nurse, to be a community nurse, perioperative nurse, as you can see in the screen. So it's quite a broad field which you can choose which occupation you want to engage in for specialty. Nurses in Australia are classified into two types. First is the enrolled nurse. To become an enrolled nurse, you need to complete at least Diploma of Nursing in Australia, which is under the Vocational and Education Training sector. Number two, to become a registered nurse, complete at least Bachelor degree of Nursing or Master of Nursing, or by doing conversion program to convert your nursing registration in Australia. Now, let's discuss about the first course in Australia, which is the Diploma of Nursing that is under Vocational Education and Training sector, or VET sector. This course runs from 1.5 years to 2 years, depending on which education provider. Entry requirements, we have the basic. Of course, you must be at least 18 years of age above. You have completed at least year 12 equivalent from your origin country and or in Australia. And must requirements is English language requirement. If you are doing IELTS, it should be 7 each band. And if you're doing PTE, it should be 65 each band. Fees, it will ranges from 30,000 to 35,000, again, depending in which provider, because there are other providers that gives 10 to 20% scholarship. When we see scholarship, it's the discount provided by the education provider. This course run every February and July if you enrolled into certain universities. But if you intend to enroll to private providers, this course runs after 2 months or every quarter. However, because of the demand of these courses, you need to have advanced enrollment because the seats are really filled immediately. Now, the next course for nursing is the Bachelor of Nursing. So there are 3 duration of nursing, Bachelor of Nursing, depending with your profile. If you don't hold any qualification yet, if you are new to the field, then you have to do a full-time course for 3 years duration. You can only do the Bachelor of Nursing for 2 years if you already completed a Diploma of Nursing. And if you already hold an enrolled nurse registration, then jumping to Bachelor of Nursing, it could only be for 2 years. Now, the last duration is 1 year. Why we have 1 year duration for nurses? For those who already has registration, nursing registration from your origin country, you can apply for recognition from prior learning or RPL. You can get 2 years credit, and then you can only have 1 year duration to do the Bachelor in doing Bachelor of Nursing, but at least you have to have minimum recency of practice from the last 5 years. Again, you can do this 1 year conversion program course if you have recency of practice from the last 5 years. And the seats are very limited and only very few providers are running this program. Entry requirements, of course, 18, you already have completed high school or year 12 equivalent, which is a prerequisite. English requirement, again, it's the same with Diploma of Nursing, 7 each band for IELTS and 65 for PTE each band. And fees quite a little expensive, but it will give you the best opportunity for your migration pathway that will range from 16,000 to 919,000 per semester, depending which education provider. So again, annual fees will range from 32,000 to 39,000 annual fees, depending providers, which they also have offers some scholarship may be available. Again, for a Bachelor degree of Nursing, available only every February and July intake. Other providers run either September or October intake if that specific university runs tri-semesters in a year. Again, slots are very limited. You have to do the admission at least 6 months, 3 months to 6 months prior, because again, seats are very limited for this course. Now, the next option into getting a nursing registration in Australia is by doing Master of Nursing course. The duration of Master of Nursing is 2 years doing full-time. Basic requirements, completion of the previous qualification. You should have, of course, your undergraduate or bachelor degree level. The interesting about Master of Nursing, even if you don't have if you are in a non-cognate background, are eligible in some providers or non-registered nurse from your home country. Non-cognate background, let's say, for example, you are an IT profession or an engineering profession, you can actually enroll for a Master of Nursing as long as you have at least from your previous qualification, you have studied some subjects specialized in human anatomy, physiology, or human biology. You can actually enroll for Master Nursing even if you're from a different background and can get a registration. For the non-registered nurse from home country, for example, if we have Filipino audience today from the Philippines, if you completed bachelor degree of nursing in the Philippines, but you don't have the registration as a nurse because you did not pass the licensure yet, you can actually do the Master of Nursing in Australia and get a registration afterward and become a registered nurse in Australia. Again, in each nursing qualification or courses, English requirement is mandatory. Again, as you can see in the screen, the required score. Fees is quite expensive, but again, it will give you to a perfect pathway residency in the future that could lead to residency. 36,000 to 40,000 annually, and there's only two intakes in a year. Only February and July, and some other providers 6 months ahead admission because again, for every nursing course level, admission process should be done in advance because only limited seats are available. Just to take note, for doing Master of Nursing course, education provider must be AFRA accredited. So AFRA stands for Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. They are the registration agency in Australia for you to get a registration to practice nursing qualification. So there are education. Please take note of this. There are education providers that runs the course but are not AFRA accredited. So even if you do Master of Nursing in Australia from an education provider that is not AFRA registered, you can only get the qualification for professional progression, but you cannot get a registration. So please take note of that. Your course must be, your education provider must be AFRA accredited. So across Australia, in all states in Australia, there are only 11 universities that runs the program. As you can see in the screen, be very specific to these providers that runs the Master of Nursing. There are 1 in Northern Territory, there are 2 in Perth, there are 2 in Victoria, there are 3 in Queensland, only 1 in South Australia, and there are 3 in Western New South Wales options. So again, be very careful when it comes to choosing Master of Nursing to only have those universities that are AFRA accredited for you not to waste your time and of course for you not to waste your resources because it involves quite a amount of money. Now the last pathway into getting a registered nurse qualification, this is for those already holding a registered nurse registration from their home country. So if you are already a registered nurse from your home country, you can do the shortcut process in less than a year by doing the outcome-based assessment or the OBA. This is already, again, for those registered nurses from origin country. We have 3 stages by doing this. Number 1, the self-check. The word itself, self-check. You can do it in your own or you can engage with an agent to help you do the process. Get assessment in AFRA for $410. But if you pass the self-check, you can get authority to test or ATT for you to do the NCLEX, the National Council Licensure Examination. So this is an online test with like multiple choices option questions. If you pass the NCLEX, then you can proceed to the stage 3, which is the objective structured clinical exam that is only available, and you can do this simulation test in Adelaide Simulation Lab. So once you finish the first step, second step, and pass the OSCE, then you can get the nursing registration in Australia and can get be registered in AFRA, and again, that would be your best opportunity to transition into your migration pathway in Australia. So for any admission process for nursing-related courses, please do contact our Aussizz Group branches. Again, you can find it in our website or visit the nearest offices near you. I will pass you on to our next presenter. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Navjot, so I'm a migration agent. Along with me, we will have Harjit Kaur and Tejas Patel, who are also migration agent. And we will be talking about all the visa options, the registration, and the skill assessment for you guys. Now, just to confirm that everyone can see my screen, I believe. Yes?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so I believe Michelle has already gone through why you would choose a nursing profession. Again, it's for your job security, competitive salaries, career growth, work flexibility, personal fulfillment, personal professional development, and additional benefits such as, of course, permanent residency for you to get Australian PR. So nurses have a global career due to high demand in various countries. Nursing career offers great, stable, permanent residency pathways in Australia. As Michelle have gone through, nurses are highly in demand in Australia. So this is probably the best pathway to move forward. I will just run an agenda for the rest of the meeting. So please feel free to ask us any questions that you would like. We will address them as soon as we can. We will go over the skill assessment requirements, the registration requirements, the visa options, and the state options for you guys, just so that we can cover everything. I will try to skim through because we have a lot to cover. So if I missed anything, please feel free to message and then we can circle back on that information. Now, the difference between enrolled nurses and registered nurse, as Michelle has gone through, for enrolled nurses, you would require a minimum qualification diploma and you would be registered as a enrolled nurse. On the other hand, for registered nurses, a minimum qualification for this would be a bachelor's or a master's degree, and you get your registration as an RN. The work that you will be doing would have, of course, more function in the development and creation of the patient management and planning the care plans. And you would also maybe supervising a team of other enrolled nurses, personal care workers, and other allied healthcare workers. Now, the registration body is AFRA, Australian Health Practitioner Agency, and then the NMBA, Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia. They are responsible for maintaining the register of nurses and midwives and issuing code, guidelines, and statements which are required for nursing and midwifery in Australia. The accreditation, so as Michelle has covered, you would want to do the courses which are accredited by AFRA and they are approved by NMBA to be eligible to get a registration. And registration is important for you to get a skill assessment, which then further gives you the eligibility to apply for your permanent residency. Now, of course, everyone would be aware, skill assessment is a mandatory requirement for your PR pathway, whether we covering 189, 190, or certain employer sponsorship pathways. There's a couple of different types of registrations. It could be general registration, limited registration, non-practicing registration, student registration, or provisional registration. It will depend on the conditions attached to your registration when you would normally complete your degree. Australian qualified nurses, so applicants or people who would have studied from Australia can apply directly through registration with AFRA, given that they do meet the English requirement. English requirement is 7 overall and 7 in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And again, PTE equivalent would be 65 overall and 65 each for all the relevant modules of the PT academic score. You can do a 2 sitting if it's done in a 6-month period. where you have achieved overall minimum of 7 each in sitting and achieve a minimum score of 7 in each of the component in the 2 sittings. And of course, you got to keep in mind that no score in any test should be below 6.5. For applicants who have studied overseas, so Michelle has covered some part of it, so I'll quickly skim through it. But you do follow through the OBA pathway. Now, this is looked after by the National Council of State Board of Nursing. And first, you do your self-check, and then you move on to your MCQ exam. The MCQ exam, again, it's a multiple choice question. You fulfill your requirement to show that you have the understanding and the knowledge to be a nurse in Australia. This program or this test can be delivered in multiple test centers, and it's available in most countries. The next thing would be your objective structured clinical exam. This is a practical exam which you have to go through. They assess your knowledge, skills, and competence at the graduate level nurse or a midwifery for Australia. They normally have about 5 tests per year. They mainly are done in South Australia as well. And any requirements or any updates that they do, this is looked after by the NMBA and the AFRA to, of course, make sure that all the applicants who are passing, they are meeting the minimum requirements as per the Australian standards. Now, registration is one of course, the mandatory requirements for you to be practicing as a or working as a registered nurse in Australia. Once you have your registration, then you move on to your second step, which would be a skill assessment. Now, skill assessment is done through NMAC. NMAC is the approved independent assessing authority, which will review your skills and knowledge, your qualifications for you to be working as a nurse or a midwife in Australia. Now, there's 3 different types of skill assessments. One would be a modified skill assessment, one would be a modified plus assessment, and the last one being a full skill assessment. Let's touch bases on the modified skill assessment. Majority of the applicants who are in Australia or who have studied overseas and come to Australia would mainly be falling under this modified skill assessment. The requirements are that you must be holding a current registration to work as a nurse or a midwife in Australia or New Zealand to apply for the modified skill assessment. The second one would be the modified plus assessment. Applicants must hold a current registration as a nurse or a midwife overseas to apply for this assessment. Applicants are required to hold a valid notice of in principle letter as well as a current registration to practice as a nurse overseas. The last one would be full skill assessment. So it's for applicants who have completed minimum bachelor's of nursing qualification, either from Canada, Hong Kong, Ireland, UK, or US, and hold registration as a registered nurse in that same country to apply for the full skill assessment. For nursing midwife, if applicant hold a minimum bachelor of midwifery qualification from either Ireland, UK, US, and of course you're registered, then you would be falling under this category. Enrolled nurses would not be applying for the full skill assessment. They would either mainly be applying for the first modified skill assessment. Now, what are the visa options? So visa options would really depend on where you are at in your migration journey. Of course, general skilled migration will be open to you, and also employer-sponsored visa option will be open to you. 482, 186, and 494 visa, which we will go in further detail for your general skilled migration categories as well. Just a couple of different occupations for you. When you have your initial registration and you apply for your skill assessment in your first 3 months, you would first get your skill assessment as a registered nurse NEC, which is the last one on the list. Once you start working in your area of practice, whether it's aged care, medical, surgical. After 3 months, you can apply for your registration again. Sorry, not the registration, the skill assessment again. You would require your reference letter and payment evidences to show that you have been working in that category. And once you have completed 3 months, have a positive, apply for the skill assessment, then you can get another assessment primarily focusing in your area of practice. So a lot of different applicants or a lot of different applicants for certain visas tend to first go for NEC as soon as they get the registration. And while they are working, they can gain experience in their relevant field and get a skill assessment again and apply for their 189, 190, or 491 respectively, depending on where they are in migration journey. Now, of course, this is only some of the occupations. Some of the occupations have already been covered in our education, but if you require more information on this, please message us and we'll be able to cover it. Some other nursing occupations would be enrolled nurse, which come under the short-term list, nurse educator, nurse manager, or nurse researcher. Of course, because it's in a different list, the pathways or the visa options would slightly be different. For people who are in the short-term list would mainly be eligible for either state sponsorship visas or temporary employer-sponsored visas leading to their PR pathway for permanent employer sponsorship visas. I'll just cover some state sponsorships requirements. Of course, we try to put as much information as we can, but if you require any information about a particular requirement or a particular state, please message us. We'll be able to cover it in a much greater detail. For Victoria, subclass 190, of course, you need to meet the minimum skill requirements for your 65 points. You must be currently living in Victoria, and if you are working, you must be working in a skilled employment where you would be claiming your income. If you do have a partner, it can have additional benefits. You can claim extra points for having a skill assessment and competent English as well. For subclass 491, the main difference is that you must be living in a regional Victoria. If you are working, well, working was a mandatory requirement. You must be working in a skilled employment, which is a skill level 1, 2, 3, as per the 𝐸𝐴𝐴 codes. If you have a partner, of course, your partner can give you extra 10 points with the skill assessment and competent English. What we have seen in our previous financial year, recently for Victoria, if you do have skilled partner, it's highly, there are better chances of you getting the invitation compared to if you don't have a skilled partner. So if you have a partner, please also consider getting skill assessment and competent English for them as well. Recent invites, just to kind of give you an idea, for registered nurses, the points were around 70 points, for aged care around 65 points, for some 491 perioperative 70 points, and enrolled nurses have gotten 65 or 70 points. This is just a general idea. Of course, we have gotten other invites for different registered nurses as well, but majority of the applicants who were touching either 65, 70, or 75 points, they were able to secure the nomination and further applying for their visa. Next, I'll cover some information about New South Wales as well. New South Wales are very particular about their expression of interest. Please keep in mind when you're applying for EOI, you have all the right information. You have covered all the points which are relevant to you, because once you get the first pre-invite when you're applying for the nomination, you cannot modify your expression of interest. You have to make sure that if you're choosing New South Wales and if you're living in New South Wales, the EOI must be exclusive to either 190 or 491 for New South Wales only. If you're choosing other states, may not be likely that you will get an invitation from New South Wales. Once invited, you must provide all the evidence for your points that you are claiming. And remember that all the points will be assessed at the nomination stage. So make sure that your skill assessments are valid, make sure that your PTE points are valid. All the information that you require must be valid at the time of nomination. Otherwise, it is likely that you will not secure the nomination. Also, in terms of your employment claims, please keep in mind New South Wales is very particular about the date that you're claiming employment. May not be much relevant to you for registered nurses, but still gotta make sure that if you have worked as a personal care attendant or enrolled nurse before applying for working as a registered nurse, you will not be able to claim the points. You can only claim the points for your particular nominated occupation. Pretty straightforward. Of course, you need to meet the minimum visa eligibility requirements, which means you have 65 points skill assessment and must have a competent English. You have a skill assessment and must be living in New South Wales at the time of nomination application. In terms of the living requirement for residency requirement for either subclass 190 or 491, New South Wales requires you to either live in New South Wales continuously for minimum of 6 months. If you are an overseas applicant, you must have lived overseas for continuous of 6 months for 190. On the other hand, if you're applying for a 491, you must show that you have been residing in New South Wales for minimum of 3 months. And if you're applying for from overseas, you must be, of course, living overseas continuously for minimum period of 3 months. For subclass 491, there are two different pathways. First pathway would be that applying directly to New South Wales with established work history with regional New South Wales based employer. You put an online application and then you wait for your assessment. All the documents will be applied, or when you're applying for the application, you'll need to provide all your nomination requirements, which means, of course, you got to prove your residence requirement, you got to prove your employment requirement. And once the nomination is in process, wait for the assessment. And once the assessment is issued, then you can apply for your visa. The other pathway would be that you get invited from New South Wales. There are rounds throughout the financial year. Of course, there is no particular date when you can get picked. It can happen at random times. And once you get your pre-invite, you will need to apply for your nomination within 14 days by completing the nomination application. Of course, the same requirements are applicable where you'll need to put where you need to meet the requirements for your residence, and also if you're claiming any points for your EOI. New South Wales focuses on their target sectors, which could be related to their specific industry. Of course, health sector is on top. They also focus on education, IT, infrastructure, and agriculture. But it's good to see that health sector is on top of New South Wales. So if you're a candidate who are either living there and studying there, it might be a good option because your occupation will be in a target sector. Next, I will cover Tasmanian options. For Tasmania, there is a lot to cover for Tasmania, mainly because they have different, for 190 and 491, they have different categories where you can apply. I will just go over some details for you, and we can go into further detail if you have any questions regarding this. But it's mainly, again, first you meet your minimum requirements. You have your skill assessment, competent English, and 65 points. For 190 or 491, it's divided into a couple of different pathways. One would be a skilled employment pathway. One would be an established resident pathway, job offer pathway, skilled graduate pathway. Tasmanian business operator pathway, and the overseas applicant invitation only pathway, right? This is their occupation list, which is a critical list for Tasmania. As you can see, it has almost all the nurses' occupations there. Whether you can apply for 190 or 491, you would be able to meet the requirements depending on which nomination pathway you are seeking. Now, again, I'll just like to touch bases on this. Each different nomination pathway would have their own requirements, and they also select applications on basis of priority attributes. So people who would have the best or the highest, or let's say more priority attributes that you're ticking, it is highly likely that you will get picked compared to the other occupations. When I say priority attributes, they're divided into either gold, green, orange, or red. So for gold, people who would have skill assessment directly related to their nominated occupation, at least 3 months included in the critical roles list. And of course, critical roles list does have nurses' occupations there. So again, Tasmania puts you into the highest their target sector, which is the gold. If you have green, you have been employed in Tasmania for at least 6 months, directly related to your skill assessment. If you're employed for Tasmania for at least 2 years, related to your skill assessment. So basically, the more attributes you are ticking, the higher the chances of you getting nomination through Tasmania. For people who are listening to this, I believe they'll mainly be focusing on nursing occupations. So the gold priority attribute would be the right one for you, which only requires you 3 months of 3 months of experience. Not gonna touch too much on the orange basis because you will either mainly be touching the gold or green. I don't think for nurses you need to mainly worry about the orange priority attributes. And yeah, that's it. So now I will move, or I'll ask Ms. Harjit to help us or give us information about the Western Australia requirements for our state sponsorships.
Thank you, Navjot. So I will start off with the Western Australia Skill Migration Program. Western Australia has 2 streams, mainly general stream and graduate stream. Now, general stream is basically that includes a lot of occupations that are, and one of them is nurses. So that falls under Schedule 1. So under general stream, there is a Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Undergraduate stream, on the students who have completed the vocational education or training in Western Australia are eligible. Now, this is the overview of the requirements under Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and graduate stream. Now, as you can see, for 190 and 49 subclasses, we've got specific requirements. The easiest one is the graduate stream, where if you've studied in WA, then you probably can apply for 190 or 491 without having at least 1 year of Australian work experience or overseas work experience in the nominated occupation. And also, you don't need a full-time employment contract in WA, which is a requirement for Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 for 190 subclass, that you must have an employment contract in WA for a minimum of 6 months in the nominated occupation. So graduate stream is the most, you can say, the easiest stream for the applicants who have studied in WA. For the other candidates for Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 occupations, besides other requirements that they have to meet for the state, they must have at least 1 year Australian experience from or overseas experience to meet the criteria for 190 and 491 under Schedule 1. And under Schedule 2, they can meet that requirement without the experience. The second requirement that is there for 190 under both Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 is that they must have an employment contract. for at least 6 months in their nominated occupation. Other than that, pretty much they have to meet the department's criteria, which is have minimum 65 points, skill occupation, the skill assessment, positive skill assessment, and also competent English to be eligible to apply for the expression of interest. That is pretty much it for the Western Australian requirements. I will quickly go through the Queensland requirements as well. Now, Queensland has got 3 streams. They have one for graduates who've studied in Queensland. Then there is another category for the skilled workers living in Queensland, and for the workers or the skilled people who have been living in out of Australia offshore. Now, as I said, the graduate stream is for the high-performing graduates who've completed their bachelor's degree, master's degree, or PhD, and are currently in Queensland. Now, the skilled workers living in Queensland can be eligible for subclass 190 and 491, provided that they meet the criteria. The criteria is pretty much the same as for the graduate stream that we earlier talked about. Now, the next one is for meeting the Queensland nomination. Now, besides this is the criteria for the departments, meeting the criteria for the department, which is the 65-point score, positive skill assessment, age should be less than 45 and must meet the English requirements. The other slide that you're looking now, the slide that you're looking at is specifically related to the Queensland nomination and how to qualify for that. Now, as you can see, the point score for 190 and 491 is a little bit different. Now, if you have 75 score, only then you are eligible to apply for 190. Now, except for trade occupations, of course, they've got some exemptions there. Other than that, your occupation must be on the eligible list. You must have competent English. Now, as far as the experience is concerned, you must have been living in Queensland and working full-time post-qualification employment, and for minimum of 30 hours per week in your nominated or closely nominated related occupation. Now, the time period is minimum 3 months immediately before the expression of interest lodgement. Now, you must be employed in your nominated occupation when your EOI is assessed. The 491 is a little bit different, but now in that area, you can see that you must have been living and working in regional Queensland and have full-time post-qualification employment in your nominated or closely related occupation. And you must still be employed in your nominated occupation when your EOI is assessed. The only difference is that you must have been living and working in regional. Now, evidence of ongoing employment. Now, when you've lodged your EOI, you should also have an employment for a further 12 months in your nominated occupation. This slide, you can see this is just a gist of all the nominations that were sent by various, for the different subclasses. As you can see, I've only highlighted Queensland and WA, but you can see all the other states as well. For Queensland, in the last financial year, 866 nominations were approved, whereas in 491, 648. Comparatively in WA, you can see it's way too high for 190, but quite similar, a little bit more in 491 with 776 nominations. I think that's pretty much what I had to cover for WA and Queensland. I pass it on to our next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tejas, as Navjot and Michelle mentioned earlier, I'm a registered migration agent as well. So I'll be covering up 2 states, which is South Australia and ACT. First of all, South Australia, obviously all the occupations are there in the list for the state nominations. So all RNs and also ENs, you can apply for either visa 190 or 491. Whether you're going to get the state nomination or not, that's a different story, but then occupations are there and the minimum requirements are 65 points to lodge a registration of interest with South Australia as a state. You must have a bachelor degree. If you're talking about graduate program, then you must have studied a bachelor or diploma of more than 1 year. And you must be working currently in South Australia post-qualification if you want to be considered as a graduate category. In order to work in South Australia, obviously for the state nomination, you need to be working full-time, which is 30 hours a week. Teaching experience required. So you need to have finished your bachelor, go on a graduate visa or any other visa which allows you to work full-time, and then only you should be able to apply for your state nomination as a registration of interest. And then once you have lodged your ROI, then you need to wait for the state to invite you to apply for the further state nomination. Working in South Australia is pretty much same. The only difference between as a graduate and work in South Australia is some occupations are not eligible for 190 if they have not studied in South Australia. But to be honest, last 12 months have been very tricky where SA have been only inviting applicants if their visas were expiring or they were turning 45. So they were expecting much different migration planning before the announcement came in late last year, where they've reduced 70% allocations to the state. So the program was designed earlier for the much larger migration planning, but then because of the reduced allocation, they had to change a lot of things. And that's why a lot of people had to wait if their visas are not expiring anytime soon. So in current situation, they have actually invited people until pretty much August, September, if their visas are expiring. But then they have closed the ROIs for this financial year. We have to wait for the next financial year if you are eligible under the new financial year. For working in South Australia, same as I said, the only difference between RNs in all other occupations are depending on the code. Some occupations get priority, some do not get priority, but then when I say priority, they are also prioritizing the applicants only on the grounds of the visa expiry and the age points as well. But if you're working in aged care as an RN aged care in regional, you might get a much higher priority as an applicant compared to someone who is working in a metropolitan area. So even though there is no advertised requirements, but then it has to be in a way where you might be handpicked because of your location of the work. And obviously there is a severe shortage of RNs in regional South Australia. So if you are sitting anywhere in Australia, and are you a registered nurse, then you should explore maybe employment options in regional South Australia. That can definitely help you with the state nomination in regards to either 190 or 491, or there are also a lot of aged cares who are willing to sponsor you if you're looking for employer-sponsored visa as well. As long as you're registered to work and stay in regional, you are in good hand in regards to your visa options. Next slide, please. I think I've covered up very shortly for the South Australia, but then what we're expecting from South Australia next financial year is there might be some changes in the occupation list. There might be change in maybe points. They've finalized all the ROIs for this financial year. There are a few pendings, but we don't know if they're going to be invited or not. It's very handful. So we'll have to wait and watch, but all of the rest ROIs have been finalized. So this financial year, they've received nearly 12,000 ROIs for an allocation of about 2,300 space for 190 and 491, which my colleague have mentioned through a slide earlier, that most of the allocation have been exhausted for the state nomination nationally for all the states. So chances of getting the invitation now in next 5 days until the financial year ends is very, very low anyway. The next state I'll cover up is the ACT, Canberra. All of the occupations are there again. Being a registered nurse, it's very good where most of the states are offering you a chance to apply for the state nomination. In regards to the minimum criteria for 190 or 491 for Canberra, what they're doing is they have their own metrics. So you need to meet the metrics requirement. In general, they have been very competitive. They have not done any kind of priority for RNs or any other medical occupations as well. So you need to meet at least 70 or 75 points on metrics if you want to apply for your 491. Or if you want to apply for 190, then obviously you need to have at least close to 90, 95 points in general. So as the slide just covers up some of the points through the reset invites, most of the applicants who are a Canberra resident, minimum is 70. In nursing educators or researchers, even RNs, minimum 70 for 491. This is, keep in mind, this is not an EOI point. This is a metrics point for the state nomination. So there are different requirements, which is basically obviously staying in Canberra, working in different fields, having a skilled partner, how long you've been working and living in Canberra as well. So you need to meet that particular Canberra metrics, and then only you'll be able to apply for your state nomination in Canberra. In general, you need to target for about 70, 75 points for 491 and about 90, 95 points for your 190 if you want to apply for 190 in particular. Next slide, please. Oh, there you go. I think we covered up most of the states. If any questions, if you want to cover up, Michelle, we're happy to take on the question. I see a lot of questions coming through in the chat box. If you want to pick up some of the questions which are very common as well, then we can just one by one answer those questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, presenters, for the amazing sessions. Yes, we do have a couple of questions lined up here for you. So starting with the first one. So the person says that I'm at NSW for 2 months and I'm holding 482 visa for 2 years. Can we apply for 190 or 189 before my probation period for 6 months to complete with my employer?
I'm happy to cover that. I don't know which state you said, Ambika, but if depending on the state, NSW. Do you want to cover up, Navjot? I think you covered up the NSW earlier, so.
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to find the question. Can you give the question again, Ambika?
Yeah. So the person says that I am at NSW for 2 months and I'm holding a 482 visa for 2 years. Can we apply for 190 or 189 before my probation period of 6 months complete with my employer?
Okay, all right. So with New South Wales, as I said, for 190 or 491, so depending on where you're living, for 190, you can be living anywhere. For 491, you must be living in regional New South Wales. Both 190 and 491, you'll put your expression of interest and then you'll have to wait for your nomination. I mean, for you to get a pre-invite. Now, the tricky thing is New South Wales is very particular about their EOIs. If their minimum requirement for 190 is that you must be living there for 6 months at least, right? For 190, and you must be living in 3 months for regional New South Wales 491. If you want to apply for your expression of interest, you can. The only tricky thing is your question is more to do with your probation period. It's not recommended that you apply for your expression of interest for now. You do need to meet your minimum residence requirement first, and then apply for the expression of interest. If you get, let's say that you have not met your residence requirement yet, and then New South Wales tend to send you an invite, you will not meet the requirements, which can then further lead to your nomination being rejected and not being picked again for the remainder of the financial year. So be very careful. I would recommend you to wait for now, complete the 6 months or for 3 months, depending on which visa pathway you would want to take.
Thank you for that, Navjot. The next question is regarding Western Australia Schedule 2, Visa 190. What does employment contract mean, and if it's that a job offer?
I can take that. So employment contract is a job offer from the employer, which states that they're happy to employ you, and that is required at the time of nomination.
Thank you for that, Harjit. The next question says that I have completed my Diploma of Nursing last month, May 2024, from South Australia. Currently, I'm offshore. So can I be able to apply for 407 visa?
Oh, 407. It depends if you meet the requirements of being graduate within the last 2 years, and also if you have any kind of experience or exposure as an EN. But then the 407, you also need a detailed training plan. So you need to have an employer who can actually deliver that training to you. So there is a complex requirement there. But understanding your, in general, recent graduate and bit of experience, you should be able to apply. Finding an employer who can sponsor you for 407 from offshore, that's going to be a challenge because you are not an RN EN. EN might be in demand on like in general, but then RNs are more in demand. So if you can, maybe finish up your bachelor and then see if you can use that to apply for your.
Thanks. The next question is that what is the difference between Masters of Nursing and Bachelors of Nursing, and which is a better pathway?
Sure, Michelle can
Michelle,
better
do you want to take?
Okay, for my perspective, it doesn't matter what you completed in Australia, either Bachelor of Nursing or Master of Nursing. At the end of the day, you just need to be a registered nurse in Australia. So completing Bachelor of Nursing, you'll become a registered nurse. Completing Master of Nursing, you'll become a registered nurse. It's the end product for you to get a residency. So at the end of the day, if you finish the Bachelor of Nursing, Master of Nursing, you are a registered nurse. You can choose whatever occupation, specialties, either aged care, mental health nurse, community nurse. Either way, you can have the pathway to residency. And yeah, so it doesn't matter Master of Nursing or Bachelor of Nursing, as long as you hold the registration of nursing in Australia, then you are in a good state.
Thank you, Michelle. I believe the next question is for you as well. So they want to know if they can get into Masters of Nursing without having a relevant background.
Yes, so we have a non-cognate background, but again, it depends which state. Every provider has different eligibility criteria. There are education providers, let's for example, in Melbourne, they require you to be in a relevant field in healthcare sector from your previous education background. But some other providers, let's for example, South Australia, in University of South Australia, even in a cognate background, you are in engineering field or in accounting field, they might be considering you for the admission of Master of Nursing, but somehow some other provider, they may require you to be working somehow like in aged care sector, or you have completed Certificate 3 or Certificate 4 in aging support, or you're working in the community sector. That could be your ticket to join in the Master of Nursing, regardless your undergraduate or bachelor of degree is engineering or in IT, but somehow you have a relevant work experience in the field, in the community sector or in aged care sector. For other providers like in WA and 𝐬𝐳𝐿 University, for example, they're running Master of Nursing graduate entry. Again, even if you're in accounting field or in IT field, but you have in your recency of experience in Australia, you work in a community sector or in a healthcare sector, that could be your triggering point to be considered a genuine student to do Master of Nursing. So yes, but not all education providers offering Master of Nursing will accept, but only limited providers and depending which state.
Thank you so much, Michelle. The next question says that if there is any difference between claiming the income and not claiming the income for 190, or if it's a requirement.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So I believe this one's probably for Victoria. So when you're a Victorian resident and you have your nominated occupation, so I'm going to just give an example, registered nurse, NEC, and you are working in a skilled employment. So you can only claim income if you are working in a skill level 1 to 3 as per the 𝐸𝐴𝐴 codes. So let's say that you are working as a registered nurse for now. You can claim income depending on what package you have, whether 65,000, 75,000, 85,000, you can do it that way. But let's say that let's say your occupation is registered nurse, but you have not been able to find employment as a registered nurse yet. Maybe you are working in a disability care or a personal care attendant. That is a skill level below the skill level 3. That is a skill level 4 job. So you then cannot claim income for your employment. For 190, whether or not you want to claim income, that's really up to you. You don't have to, it's not mandatory. It is like, it does make your chances much higher when you are claiming income from skilled employment to get that nomination quickly, to get that pre-invite quickly. But again, there is no such requirement that you do need to be working mandatory. On the other hand, if you are targeting 491, then yes. So when you're targeting 491 Victoria, then your employment must be skill level 1 to 3. You must be living in regional area as well. So difference is 491 mandatory, 190 your discretion. If you are working, claim it. If you're not working, then I would avoid it.
Thank you for that, Navjot. The next question says that people who get registrations have, is it important if they have to give their skill assessment done as well?
Yeah, I'll just cover that as well. So registration just allows you to work in Australia. Again, a lot of people would get registrations for different authorities. If I'm a pharmacist, I need to be registered into an authority. Of course, us as migration agents, we are registered through our authority as well. So Australia requires all the professionals to be registered so they can follow a proper code of conduct. But in terms of your skill assessment, that is your requirement for your visa purposes. So don't confuse yourself. Once you have your registration, you do need to get your skill assessment from ANMAC. ANMAC is the authority where they will check your registration, they'll check your qualification, and if you're working as well, they'll check your reference letter, plus your employment documents, depending on whichever occupation you're going for. So, yeah, it would be a mandatory requirement for your permanent residency pathways. Yes.
Okay. And the next question says that if it's a requirement for the 485 visa to get the skill assessment and the registration done before to apply for one.
So 485 visa is different occupation. Anyways, I believe this question is a bit tricky. Anyways, normally, if you've done bachelor's or master's, you would not be applying for a skill assessment. Anyways, you would be going through a post-study work stream. If you're applying, if you have done diploma of nursing, you will not be applying for a 485 visa on this way, on this qualification anyways, mainly because this occupation comes under the short-term list. So short-term list occupations normally do not, they do not meet the requirements for 485. Meaning that if you've done diploma of nursing, you can't do 485. You can apply 190 or 491. You will probably have to upskill yourself to continue bachelor's of nursing and then apply for your 485 visa. Skill assessment is requirement for 190, 491, 189, and of course 186 or 494 visas if that's applicable to you.
Thank you. The next question says that I'm doing a conversion bachelor's of nursing program, and how many points will I be able to claim?
I don't think you'll be able to claim enough points, mainly because it won't meet the requirements for 16 months as well. We'll need to check, but I don't think so. I think majority of the conversion programs are for 1 year.
So the next question says that I have an experience for 1.5 years in medical laboratory technicians. So that is why, is there any option for PR pathway in Victoria?
Good question. It is completely different to what we are going for, but I will just touch bases on that as well quickly. You do need to get a skill assessment. You can claim points for your 1 year. It has a good pathway, but of course it depends on which state you're living at. I highly recommend you to sign up on our conclave for the laboratory technician occupations and also on our particular state that you're living as well. So you can ask your questions that way. Other thing that I recommend to you, you can also join our end of the day session. It will be about Ask Aussizz. So we will be able to answer any and everything basically that I can't answer in this particular session. So apologies.
Well, thank you so much, presenters. It's been an amazing session. We have tried to take up as much as questions we can in the session right now. And as Navjot mentioned, there will be an Ask Aussizz session from 5 to 6 today. We'd be more than happy to have you all there and ask your questions. Before we leave for the day, we also have got an attractive giveaway, which is waiting for you all, in which you just have to create a video about your conclave experience and tag at Aussizz Group, #Aussizz Conclave 2024. So there will be an exciting prize for that and also very good offers that Aussizz has. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you so much, presenters, for the session today and all the people that have joined for the session. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you.